On a quiet summer night in July 2016, in the upscale city of Bellaire, Texas, just minutes from downtown Houston, what appeared to be a picture-perfect family would suddenly become the center of one of the most puzzling, true crime cases in modern American history. Antonio Armstrong Sr., a former NFL linebacker who had once played for the Miami Dolphins before injuries cut his career short, had built a new life as a successful businessman, motivational speaker, and fitness coach. Alongside his wife Dawn Armstrong, he owned a local gym called First Class Training, and together they raised 3 children in what friends and neighbors described as a loving, stable home. Their eldest son Josh was Dawn's child from a previous relationship but had grown very close to Antonio Sr. over the years. Their other 2 children, 16-year-old Antonio AJ Armstrong Jr. and 12-year-old Kara, still lived at home. AJ was known as a popular football player at school, confident and athletic like his father, while Kara was the youngest and adored by her family. On the evening of July 28, 2016, the Armstrong household followed its normal routine. Around 10 p.m., the family went to bed. Kara armed the home security system, which monitored every door and window and included motion detectors throughout the house. Dawn and Antonio slept in their master bedroom on the 2nd floor. Kara's bedroom was down the hallway, and AJ slept in a loft bedroom on the 3rd floor that he had once shared with his older brother Josh, who had recently moved into his own nearby apartment. For several hours, the house remained quiet. AJ stayed awake texting his girlfriend, Kate, and the 2 exchanged messages late into the night before finally ending their conversation shortly after 1 a.m. Then, around 1:40 a.m., something terrifying happened. AJ dialed 911 and told the dispatcher that he had heard gunshots inside the house. He said he had walked downstairs and noticed that the door to his parents' bedroom was slightly open, something he insisted they never did. During the tense call, AJ hesitated multiple times, pausing as if unsure what to say. At one point he mentioned hearing a ringing in his ear. 7 minutes into the call, he entered the code to disarm the home security system and opened the front door as police arrived. Officers rushed inside and quickly discovered a horrifying scene. Dawn Armstrong lay dead in bed with 2 gunshot wounds behind her ear. Antonio Armstrong Sr. was still barely alive with a gunshot wound to the head and was rushed to the hospital, though he would later die from his injuries. Both victims had been shot while asleep, and investigators noticed pillows placed over their heads, possibly to muffle the sound of the gunshots. The murder weapon was quickly identified as Antonio Sr.'s own .22 caliber handgun, which had been taken from the master bedroom and left on the kitchen counter after the shooting. Next to it was a disturbing note scrawled on a notepad that read, "I've been watching you for some time. Get me." The letters had been written heavily and repeatedly, almost as if someone had tried to disguise their handwriting. Yet something about the scene puzzled investigators immediately. The house security system showed no record of any doors or windows being opened throughout the night. Every entrance was still locked, and there was no sign of forced entry. If the security logs were correct, it meant the killer had already been inside the home. Only 3 people were present: AJ, his younger sister Kara, and their parents. Kara had been asleep in her room and had only come downstairs after AJ woke her during the 911 call. That left police focusing almost immediately on 16-year-old AJ Armstrong Jr. He was placed in handcuffs and taken in for questioning just hours after discovering his parents had been shot. Detectives noted that AJ appeared strangely calm during the interview and did not cry or show visible emotion. As investigators processed the crime scene, they began uncovering details that seemed suspicious. Shell casings from the .22 handgun were found in the master bedroom, but there were also casings in AJ's bedroom upstairs. When questioned, AJ admitted he had previously fired his father's gun weeks earlier while showing it off to a friend. Police soon discovered a bullet hole in the ceiling above his parents' bedroom that traced back to AJ's room on the 3rd floor. AJ insisted the shot had happened weeks earlier and that he had tried to muffle it with pillows and blankets, but investigators doubted that explanation because fresh drywall dust appeared to be scattered on the floor below. They also found a strange burn mark on the carpet on the 2nd floor landing that smelled strongly of gasoline. Nearby in AJ's bedroom, officers discovered an empty bottle of rubbing alcohol. Prosecutors would later argue that AJ had been experimenting with setting a fire in the hallway days before the murders, possibly to block escape routes for his parents. Based on these clues and the apparent impossibility of an intruder entering the home, the Houston Police Department concluded that AJ had likely murdered his parents. Yet despite their suspicions, there was a major problem with the evidence. No gunshot residue was found on AJ's hands, arms, or clothing. None of his parents' blood was on him, and no bloody clothing was discovered anywhere in the house. Investigators also could not find signs that he had washed away evidence in sinks or drains. DNA recovered from the gun and notepad belonged to members of the Armstrong family but could not be tied to any one individual. AJ insisted he had seen someone else in the house that night, a masked man running down the stairs, but he had not mentioned this during the 911 call, only revealing it hours later during questioning. Prosecutors believed this story was fabricated. Still, the case against him remained entirely circumstantial. AJ was charged with 2 counts of capital murder and released on $200,000 bond while awaiting trial. His family publicly supported him, insisting he could never have killed his parents. As the legal battle unfolded, unexpected twists complicated the case even further. A family friend named Maxine Adams claimed Antonio Armstrong Sr. had been involved in a prostitution ring and had received threats from dangerous associates. Defense attorneys argued this information suggested other suspects, but investigators found no proof linking those claims to the murders. When AJ finally went to trial in 2019, the courtroom heard more than 39 hours of testimony about family tensions, suspicious evidence, and the reliability of the home security system. Prosecutors presented text messages showing AJ had been arguing with his parents about school, curfews, and lying. Defense attorneys countered that the messages reflected ordinary teenage conflict and pointed out that AJ had been texting his girlfriend affectionately, just 90 minutes before the shooting, hardly the behavior of someone planning murder. The security system logs became the most critical evidence. According to the state, motion sensors showed activity consistent with AJ moving around the house shortly before the killings and then calling 911 at 1:40 a.m. But the defense discovered that the alarm system had recorded dozens of errors in previous months, including failures to detect doors opening. If the system was unreliable, an intruder could theoretically have entered the house without triggering alarms. After days of emotional testimony, the jury deliberated for more than 19 hours but could not reach a unanimous verdict. The result was a mistrial, with 8 jurors believing AJ was guilty and for voting not guilty. Prosecutors immediately announced they would try him again. The second trial began in 2022 after pandemic delays. By this time, AJ was 23 years old and had become a father himself. During the retrial, the defense introduced a shocking alternative: suspected Jay's older brother, Josh. After the murders, Josh had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and had reportedly told doctors he believed he had witnessed his parents' killing. Defense attorneys argued these statements placed him at the scene, while prosecutors said they were merely symptoms of his mental illness triggered by the trauma. The jury once again struggled to decide the truth. After lengthy deliberations, they deadlocked for a second time, this time with the majority leaning toward acquittal. Another mistrial was declared, leaving the case unresolved years after the murders. Prosecutors have continued to insist that AJ Armstrong killed his parents, pointing to the locked house mystery, the gun inside the home, and the timeline of events. But after 2 trials, no jury has been able to unanimously agree. To this day, the murders of Dawn and Antonio Armstrong remain one of Texas's most baffling cases, a tragedy where the evidence seems to point in one direction, yet doubt refuses to disappear. Was AJ Armstrong a troubled teenager who snapped and murdered his parents while they slept? Or was there truly someone else inside that house that night? Nearly a decade later, the question still hangs over the case, waiting for a final answer that may or may not ever come.